of the Stop the War Coalition, which helped organise the march in London yesterday. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon, Lindsey.
Hello, Natasha.
Hello. What would be your response to that caller that I just mentioned who said that people's investment in what's happening in Gaza is just an excuse for anti-Semitism?
Well, I agree with you. I think it's a terrible and it's a very unfortunate thing to say, because I think, there clearly are anti-Semitic people in our society, and there clearly has been a rise in the number of anti-Semitic attacks in recent weeks, as there has been a rise in Islamophobic attacks. And unfortunately, that's what happens when there's heightened conflict in Israel and Palestine. But I think what's absolutely clear is that people who go on the demonstrations, they do so for a range of reasons, but essentially because they think there's a great injustice being done to the Palestinians and they want that to be righted. And that isn't against Jewish people, it's against what the Israeli government is doing. But there are many Jewish people on our marches. I saw a whole number of people, a number of different banners which were saying Jewish groups, of different Jewish groups that were there. It was a demonstration that embraced people of different religions, different nationalities, and so on. And it wasn't a demonstration which was aimed at attacking any individual. It was aimed at criticism of the Israeli government, but also of our government and the United States government and what they're doing in allowing Israel to carry on in this way. So I think it's sad and it's unfortunate, but it simply isn't true.
I mean, Palestine has been a big issue, particularly on the left wing of politics, for a really long time. Like I say, more so, it has received more attention than other atrocities which are happening throughout the world. Do you think that it's because it appeals to a British sense of fair play, where you have one side that is so much better armed than the other? Or do you think it's because of the role that Britain played in establishing Israel as a state in the first place, so there's a sense of residual guilt? Or do you think it's a combination of those things, or neither?
Well, I think it's been a very long learning process. As you say, Britain was responsible for the mandate for Palestine in the run-up to the establishment of the State of Israel, and Britain has always supported Israel, as has the United States. But I think for most people, probably when they thought, I don't know, let's say 50 years ago, they wouldn't have known very much about the Palestinians. They wouldn't have known what had happened to them in 1948 when many of them were driven off their land. And it's been a long process, a whole combination of things. For example, there are many, many people who now visit Palestine as part of delegations, and they go there as student delegations or maybe trade union delegations. So they meet Palestinians. There's obviously a number of Palestinians who live in this country and who have friends and family and so on there. So people have become more and more aware over the years. And of course, what we've also seen in the last, 30 or 40 years, we've seen an increase in conflict between Israel and the Palestinians, and particularly since you had the Oslo Accords and you had the settlements which have increased and encroached onto what were already occupied territories, but more and more settlements in those occupied territories. Plus you've had the siege of Gaza now for nearly 20 years. People have got quite a high awareness. I'm not saying everybody in the country, but there's a minority of people who have a high awareness of it. So I don't think it's about guilt about Britain's past, although perhaps we should feel guilty about Britain's past, but I don't think it's mainly that. I think it's mainly that people can see there is an injustice. And if you go and see the difference between the way people live in Gaza and the way people live in Israel, it's quite dramatic. And the way the settlements are in the West Bank and the way that the Palestinians live in the West Bank is quite a dramatic contrast. And people would like to see a solution to this.
I was coming into the studio yesterday and I won't say caught up in the protest, because I never felt unsafe at any point. Everything I saw was very peaceful, and also there was, I felt, a mood of sadness as well to the protest yesterday. And what I experienced is very at odds with some of the press coverage that I'm seeing today, which it appears there's a bit of a drive to make it seem as though there were lots of clashes with police and lots of anti-Semitic chanting, when in reality, that was probably a tiny minority of the people that were there. I wonder, how would you characterize the mood of the protest as a whole?
I think what you say is right. I think that it was a sadness because we just had the beginning of the ground invasion. People had no way. I mean, I had lots of Palestinians coming up to me and say, I don't know what's happening to my family. I'm really worried because I can't even talk to them. I don't even know whether they're dead or alive. There was a real sadness, but also, and I think, I don't know whether you felt this, but I think there's a spirit on the demonstration which is about unity, about solidarity, and about being able to express what we want. Now, I didn't hear any single anti-Semitic chant, and as one of the organisers, we expressly, over the years, we've made it absolutely clear that any anti-Semitism on anything that could be construed as anti-Semitic, any placards that might be construed as that, are not welcome on the demonstration. So, the fact that the press pick on these things, I think if they indeed exist, I mean, they criticised last week that somebody had chanted jihad on a totally separate, tiny demonstration, which had nothing to do with us. And, if indeed these things exist, they're not giving a fair picture of what the demonstration is like, because the demonstration, hardly any arrests, no violence on the demonstration. I can't say categorically there was never any, because they did arrest a few people, so I don't know. But even the police in the last 3 weeks have said these are very well organised, very peaceful demonstrations. They don't take the view that these are things that are a big policing problem for them. So the fact that the newspapers jump on these kind of stories, I think, is irresponsible reporting, to be quite honest.
Lindsey German, convener of the Stop the War Coalition, which helped organise the march in London yesterday there. And now it's over to you. If you are heavily